Hi, everyone. My name is Kirk Bachman, and welcome back to The Ultimate Dish. In today's episode, we're speaking with Escoffier Boulder's executive chef, Bob Scherner. Chef Bob is a 40-year plus veteran in the industry. In 2002, he was invited to the James Beard House for the Rising Star Chef Series, a prestigious honor that very few chefs ever experience. Bob has been featured in Gourmet, Food and Wine Magazine, USA Today, and Wine Spectator, and was voted top 10 restaurants in the US by Esquire Magazine, also in 2002. Join us today as we chat with Chef Bob about his extensive career and how he helps mold aspiring chefs at Escoffier Boulder's campus. Welcome, Chef. Thanks for being here this morning. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year, Chef. Thanks for having me. I'm really looking forward to this.
As am I. It's not as if we haven't seen each other just quite recently,
like 2 minutes ago.
So I think what people will discover very quickly, right, is that we've met, right? And not only have we worked together for years here at Escoffier, and I'm going to give our ages away here. We also attended culinary school together in Portland, Oregon, which seems like 1,000 years ago, right? But how much fun was that? Personally, I have so many fond memories of my time at Western. Same for you?
Oh my gosh. Yeah, it was a time of my life. I wasn't cool, for the record, I wasn't cool enough to hang out with Chef Kirk's group. So
we kept an eye on you. We kept an eye on you. You were increasing the scale in every one of the classes, right? So yeah, it's like, who's this Bob guy?
Oh gosh, it was so much fun. I mean, it was like, all I had to worry about was where my next gas money came from and where my next bag of ramen came from. But it was amazing. It was so much fun. I got so much out of it.
Yeah. Portland was different back then too. I think right after we finished culinary school, Portland kind of blew up on the food scene. It became a real destination spot. Mm-hmm. Did you work while you were at school?
I did. I worked. My first job was I worked as a janitor from midnight until 4 a.m. You won't find that on my resume anywhere, but I did work in a small French kitchen in South Portland, and it was really interesting time back then. It was just right on the cusp of, I think the whole area really discovering what was there, right? I mean, there was just seafood galore. There's wine country. There's hazelnuts, the berries. I mean, wild mushrooms. It's just incredible, local ingredients that are right at everyone's fingertips. So I think things really took off after I left.
Yeah. Same here. There were some restaurants that started to pop up on trendy First Street or 21st, 23rd mm-hmm. up there in Northwest Portland. Yeah. I'll never forget. I was at the Benson Hotel. And we had a chef there, Swiss chef, had been there for 40 years. And so one day, the director of restaurants, myself, I was the director of the London Grill restaurant there at the Benson. And we took Chef Xavier up to one of these fancy new restaurants. Somebody a guy named Bruce Carey opened up some restaurants in Northwest. He had just been in San Francisco for years. Ironically enough, I went to college with Bruce, and he went away, came back. And we went in and we had lunch, and the produce was spectacular. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, Xavier didn't say a word the entire time. He enjoyed his meal. We got back and everybody heard it. He called every vendor in the city of Portland and like, I want the same produce. But that's what put Portland on the map, right? Became local, fresh product, that sort of thing. So, and I think they carry that same kind of reputation today. Mm-hmm. For sure in Portland.
Yeah, it's a mecca for growing conditions, not only for wine, but for so many other different types of produce. It's really, it's a wonderful destination now. I mean, it holds its own with any other major metropolitan area.
Absolutely. But you're a true Boulderite. I don't know if that's a word or not, but you were born in Chicago, moved to Boulder at a young age, right?
Right. Yeah. I'm as close to a native as you get these days. I moved to Colorado in, well, I'm not going to say the year, but when I was 3 years old, My parents helped, of course. And
yeah.
So I've been described as the salmon of the family.
Oh, I like
because
that.
every time I leave Colorado, I always end up coming back. So my time in Portland, I came back to Colorado. My time in Chicago, I came back to Colorado. So I just love it here. And Boulder is quite a special community.
Yeah, 100% agree. I can't believe how many parallels, right, between you and I, other than the competition at culinary school. But I too grew up in Chicago, born and raised there. We came here a little bit later than you did, but yeah, I keep coming back to Colorado as well. Super happy we're here. So where did the cooking come in? So you're 3 years old, you moved to Boulder. I know that you did a lot of stuff with sports. You were a skier and all that stuff. And when did the cooking kick in?
Well, it happened like any other, kid growing up in Boulder. Was, you get to 15, 16 years old, starting to feel some independence. You can drive, and it was time to get a job. And my first job was up at Chautauqua Dining Hall up in Chautauqua
Oh,
Park.
That's right. I forgot that. Yeah.
And I washed dishes there, and it was perfect, right? It was only open in the summertime. It was a real novelty for the population of Boulder, because there was an opening and a closing, and it was kind of like that's what set summer, that's what started summer when Chautauqua opened. And I loved it, and I fell in love with it immediately. And I went back for 7 summers after that. In fact, the owner of the restaurant actually sent me to culinary school on a scholarship, provided I came back and I worked.
I was going to ask. Wow, that's great. So, yeah. So, how old were you then? So,
well, I was 15 when I first started,
okay,
and I worked there. My last, my last summer there was, I think it was 22 maybe or so.
Okay.
Yeah. So I worked my way up to, I was dishwasher, saw the entire building get remodeled, and that was really cool, because we kept all the historical features of the building, and I kept coming back, and I kept getting a little bit promoted each time, and I ended up being the kitchen manager for dinners. We had the concert series that happened every 2 or 3 times a week, and those were the nights that were just crazy busy, and fell in love with it right away. I fell in love with the people that worked there. Fell in love with the pace, and very much like going on stage every night. You practice and you practice and you practice, and you still don't know exactly how it's going to come out, right? There's still that little element that kind of gives you a little edge, right? And that's what I really fell in love with.
I love that analogy, and it's such a great message for students. So this whole concept of being on stage, all eyes on you, right? So move gracefully in the kitchen. And for our listening audience, Chautauqua is a really special place. Try to imagine almost every seat in the house, including the porch out front, is facing the Flatirons, right, to the west, and it's just absolutely gorgeous.
Yeah, it's a special place. I mean, it was
open today.
Comical. Yeah. People would come up for breakfast and lunch, were the really popular meals during the day, and people would come up to the podium and say, there'll be 4 of us. We'd like to sit on the patio, and the host would say something like, yeah, well, that'll be about 2.5 hours. And they're like, oh, okay, we're just going to throw the Frisbee in the park and
we'll walk around. Yeah. I love it. That was a time ago, right? People seem to be in a little bit more of a hurry today than they were back
absolutely.
then. Yeah. And any influences back then, right? I mean, the best is yet to come for Chef Bob in Chicago and Telluride and such, but any influences at that early age, working at Chautauqua?
Just some of the people I worked with were just awesome. I mean, I really enjoyed seeing how they approached their job, and that buzz that you got before that service time, right? It's like going on stage. You get a little flutter. I've kept that my entire career. Right before service, I always have that little bit of flutter, like, nah,
I love that.
We've practiced and we're not still 100% sure how it's going to go, but we're going to, give it our all. So
how do you pass that message on to students? That little tiny bit of anxiety is okay, right?
Yeah, it's something you embrace, right? It's something it comes from all of the preparation, right? We emphasize preparation here with students over and above everything else. And that's really what it comes down to in the industry. If you're prepared, if your crew is prepared, you're prepped, you know your role, and then you're ready to go. If you're not, it's probably not going to go as well.
It's gonna be a rough night. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Hey, let's we'll bounce around a little bit. I want to talk a little bit about James Beard and then James Beard House, and for our listening audience, probably have to share a few things about how important James Beard was. Portland native too. Spent a lot of time up there. I've had the luxury of helping cooking at the James Beard one time, but I had a lot more fun just being a guest at the James Beard House. No pressure and such, but I know that you've been there a couple of times. What is that experience? Maybe set the stage a little bit too, Chef. Who is James Beard, and why is this house that Julia Child ensured never went away, in that beautiful neighborhood in New York City?
Right.
Why is it so important? Why is it a pinnacle for a chef to get there?
Right. I think the first thing, James Beard was really an ambassador for food, right? He wasn't really a professional chef, but he entertained. And if you've ever been to the Beard House, is the kitchen and everything is just set up for a party, right? You go in there and first room you walk into is the kitchen, because the party's always in the kitchen. But, he's an incredible advocate for cooking locally. This was kind of at the time when Cajun and Creole was really making a big impact. And, he was bringing the attention to, hey, you know what? We don't have to try to cook French food or Italian food. We can cook our own food right here at home. And, that was a really pivotal point for Americans and American chefs. But James Beard, when he passed on, Julia Child was a very good friend, and she organized, I believe it was Alice Waters and Wolfgang Puck, and they purchased his home and they created the James Beard Foundation. So, along with all kinds of things, scholarships, fundraisers, they do an Academy Awards of chefs every year.
Yeah.
And it's quite an honor to be nominated for that type of thing. So, but they do events throughout the year. They do. When I was the first time I went there, I went with Charlie Trotter, and of course he didn't need an introduction at that point. So we went. World's longest shift for me. I tell my students this story, but it was 52 hours long. And we just went nonstop from prepping in Chicago, regular service, to get to New York, set up, cook the dinner. And then we all realized, hey, it's midnight and we're in New York. So we have to go and have a good time.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
But, that was a really incredible experience. And then being invited, back as the Rising Star Chef series, for me, that was like walking into Carnegie Hall if I was a musician. Just the history, and you just flash through in your head who came there to cook before you, and the list just keeps running and running, and it's just it's unbelievable. You feel like I have to knock this out of the park because of all the other chefs that have done the same thing.
And there's nowhere to hide, right? There's I mean, to your point, the kitchen is right there and everyone wants to be there, even though, some parts of the house are sort of set up like a dining room, but everyone wants to be in the kitchen. It's completely open. And does that add to the pressure, or does that increase the excitement level?
Well, both, I think. I think, guests that come in, they want to chit chat, and you're like, got some things going on here.
Yeah.
But my family came in from all over the East Coast and,
wow.
and had a table, and
that's great.
I was lucky enough to bring a lot of my crew. The really cool thing was, because I am a bit of a competitive person, the original invite kind of came with a set of concerns by the Beard House. You're like, Telluride is teeny tiny little town. People might not know it. We're worried about the draw. We're worried about selling tickets. Well, we had people in tables in the hallway, right? Because we oversold it. And,
wow.
And it was really cool. So I got kind of the final "I told you so" to the James Beard House a little bit. But it was incredible. And watching my crew experience that for the first time was magical. It was really cool.
So from a timeline perspective, when you are in New York, let's say for the first time you were at the Beard House, where were you in your career? How many years removed from culinary school? Or I'm just trying to put you on a timeline, not give away your age.
Right. So after my Chautauqua time, I of course went to Western Culinary. I came back as part of my scholarship obligation to work one more season at the Chautauqua Dining Hall. Then I moved to the Flagstaff House. I worked there for 2 years. And that was it. The job couldn't have been more perfect, because it just took all the training I got in culinary school, and I got to hone that and really perfect those skills and techniques. And from there, I went to Trotters. So,
okay.
I'm not going to say years again, but
yeah,
I was pretty young, mid 20s when I worked for Charlie Trotter, and we're all bone and grizzle at that point. You're a pretty tough group.
How important is an institution like the Flagstaff House, the Manette family, right? 30 years, 40 years, consistent level of cuisine, high level of cuisine. Yeah.
Incredible. Yeah. I mean, the Manettes have done just such a tremendous job up there. It's all in the family. It's run by the family. I believe the father purchased the Flagstaff House in 1971. So, and it's been a landmark destination since then. Really, really cool. The wine list speaks for itself. It's as deep as the Atlantic Ocean. I mean, it's just incredible. The Don Manette has a private cellar there, and the door is a really big, heavy door, and it's filled with cork. And
wow. Yeah.
I was lucky enough to go in that room. He didn't show it to everyone, but that was all of the wine that he bought at auction. And he's showing me, hand cut Schramsberg glass bottles, that he bought for tens of thousands of dollars. And it was amazing. It was the best of everything. Really had a good time there, and it opened the door for my experience in Chicago.
So. Absolutely. And that temple is right up the hill. We can almost see it here from the campus. That's pretty incredible. Years ago, again, not giving away ages, when I was running a restaurant on the Western Slope, I had a young man at the time who had spent 5 years with the Manette family. And I can attest that his technique, his level of technique was unlike anything I'd seen. Just spectacular. Prep cook, great presence in the kitchen. Just so comfortable. Love that. Yeah.
Yeah. It was, if you look at the setting and you look at the views, it's like, he didn't have to make his own pasta. He didn't have to make lobster bisque from scratch, right? But he did out of integrity. And I think that's what I really admired about the Manette family, is they didn't cut corners at all.
Yeah.
And it's pretty incredible institution they've built up there.
Yeah. And to your point, the view alone, the drive, the view, the walk, is enough to pull people up there. So putting that kind of food on the plate is just another plus. I love that. So chef, you've worked at some of, we're hinting around. So you've worked at some of the top restaurants in the country: Flagstaff House, Charlie Trotters. 221 South Oak Bistro, Allreds in Telluride. How do you approach, and well, still approach innovation when you're creating dishes, perhaps that have been on the menu for years, right? Or you want to tweak them a little bit. So how do you approach that every night? And then is there a pressure, like a personal pressure that you take upon yourself every single night because you know it's got to be perfect? Because people drive, from all around the country to come to these institutions, right? And here you are, because Charlie's not cooking, right?
No.
Don's not cooking, right? You are, but your reputation's on the line every night. This is a good question, because students will listen to this. Like, how do I prepare myself to walk onto that stage every single day, every single night?
I think, it's just, there's so much to it. I get my inspiration from ingredients, right? And cooking within the seasons. You've never seen anyone get so excited about a Brussels sprout when they start coming out, right? And that to me is the ultimate homage, right? To pay to not only the product, but who grew it, right?
Who grew it, yeah.
Grew it or raised it or caught it or whatever it may be. I think that level, I don't think there's a chef out there that really doesn't put that pressure on themselves. But allowing that enthusiasm to spill over onto your crew, I think, is critical. You have to have them on board, because you just can't be an island in this industry. And, that enthusiasm really needs to be contagious, and funny word I should choose in this day and age, right? But, it's to get them excited about what you're excited about. A lot of collaboration. I think the mindset of everything can be made better. It doesn't matter. You're only as good as your last dish. And I think one of the challenges in this industry now is when chefs get their menu set, they're slinging plates out into the dining room, and you start to lose that a little bit if you don't pay attention to, how am I going to tweak this and make it a little bit better? Not always adding something. It could be taking something away, making it simpler. But having that mindset of I can make this better each and every time. And that's what we try to instill in our students as well. This society moves so quickly, and students get in the mindset of, I like it, I hate it. And then they move on. And it's like, well, wait a minute. We kind of reel them back a little bit and say, okay, let's take a look at that and see what it is about that dish that you love or you hate, and why. And I always ask them to ask themselves a question when they finish the dish. If they had to make that dish exactly right then and there, exactly the same way, what would they do differently? And a lot of things come up to the surface for them, like, oh, geez, well, I would have cooked it in a hotter pan, or a lower oven, or I would have cooked it longer or not as long, or I would have seasoned this a little bit, or I might have added a little something to that. Those are all the lessons that we try to pass on to our students that are lifelong and really, really important to have in the industry. So
absolutely. I when I hear you talk about the seasonality of ingredients and how much respect you have for the grower, for the farmer, for the ingredient itself, and then how critical thinking plays a part in the experience of a student at culinary school. Maybe talk a little bit about how technique, how, is it on the same level as quality ingredients? I know that technique is king or queen for you. I mean, it's really important to get those foundational techniques, but maybe speak a little bit about that. We're probably going to just keep talking for the next hour and a half, because this would be the best part of my day, right? You just kind of revisiting what we do in the classrooms every day, but maybe just talk for a moment about the importance of understanding technique and then how that's applied to these ingredients.
Yeah. I mean, you can't have one without the other, right?
Well said.
If you have great product and you don't know how to treat it, you're just kidding yourself. And if you have product that, that is old or tired or bought from halfway around the world, it doesn't matter what technique you apply to it, it's still not going to improve it. You can get a little idealistic, I think, which is sometimes a hiccup that some students have. There's that balance between technique and product. I use the adage with students all the time of saying, it doesn't matter what you're working on. Sometimes it matters how you're working on it. The technique is absolutely paramount, and not just from your standpoint. It's from you have to communicate that to your staff, and you have to have them on board with having that dedication.
And that commitment to technique is important every single day, whether you're at sea level or you're at 10,000 feet at Allreds and Telluride. So Chef, let's talk about the uniqueness of not only Telluride, but Allreds. On a mountain, 10,000 feet. I mean, how do you do that? I mean, I get the way that you can get people, your guests up there on a gondola and bring them down. But what about employees? What about product? What about problems that you have at 10,000 feet? Walk us through that.
That was a really a unique time in my career. So to give you some framework around that, we had there's a kind of a ridge of mountains that divide the town of Telluride, the historical town of Telluride, and the town of Mountain Village. And the owner, or the president of the ski area, his name was Ron Allred. And he was kind of starting to step down and step away from the company. And he had always had this vision of creating a restaurant right there. And so he was a good customer of my restaurant, that I had then, 221 South Oak. And, so he invited me up to the top of the gondola. I was kind of curious. I wasn't really quite sure what he had in mind. And we trudged out into the snow on a platform. And he said, there's going to be a restaurant about 30 feet above us. And I would really like you to be a part of it. And I was like, okay, let's do it. And, it was a once in a lifetime opportunity for me, because I got involved in the building and the design, designed all the wine cellars and wine cabinets and the kitchen, of course, and the dining room and all that stuff. And it was just amazing. His instruction to me was, I don't care what you spend, just don't screw it up. And so
it kind of feels like the Grinch up, above Whoville, just kind of looking down, right?
Yeah. So, the challenges were incredible. Gondola, of course, the guests and employees would come up via the gondola. The gondola ran from 6 a.m. until midnight every day. And so we had that span of time, which was pretty doable. But we couldn't transport product on the gondola cars. We had to use snowcats to bring that up. Well, in the wintertime, we'd have specially designed boxes that were actually designed not to keep food cold, but to keep food warm. So for leafy greens and herbs and that sort of stuff, we had to keep it. We would throw a couple of jugs of hot water in with these containers, and to keep the basil from freezing and that sort of thing. So that was tough, getting food up. And then we would take, of course, in a separate snowcat, we would take the trash and recycling down.
And there's a cost there too, right? Or are those favors from the ski patrol?
No, that was all built in. It was certainly a unique situation.
Very unique, yeah.
We there were times, the gondola would stop at midnight, and there were times I remember very well running through the restaurant at at 10 to 12 saying, everybody get out of here, we need to go. And, the employees would get out, and there was more than once where I found myself, kind of spending the night up there. Yeah. So we had emergency evac procedures, via snowmobile and that sort of thing. So it was really an incredible opportunity. The views were facing the town of Telluride, which was 1,800 feet below where the restaurant was.
Okay.
And the views were breathtaking. Really, it was a very unique place.
Technique's still equally important at 10,000 feet as at sea level, right?
Can't cook a bean at 10,000. It was actually 10,551 feet.
Wow.
Can't cook beans. Can't cook dried beans at that altitude. I was a little idealistic, and I wouldn't use a pressure cooker because I don't like how aggressive that technique is. But we would cook beans for days, and they still would just never get done because the water would only get so hot.
Could only go so far. Yeah.
So,
yeah.
It was
another lesson there. Another lesson for students there. I love that.
For sure.
I'm gonna move back over to Chef Trotter just for a minute, because I know that this was a very memorable time in your life. And quick story on Charlie Trotter. Boy, when he was at the pinnacle of his success, and even at the beginning of his success, he was doing things that, just no one had done before. The cookbooks were spectacular. And I know you had a part in some of those cookbooks as well. I remember a time I had a restaurant on the Western Slope here in Colorado, and thought it was a good idea to line my restaurants with the menus of other chefs' restaurants that I admired. And it was, here's the age that you get. It was before the time of the internet, right? I couldn't just send an email or upload something. So literally called Charlie Trotter's, got a hold of someone, and literally a week later, here comes a package to my restaurant with a couple of his menus and a autograph from Charlie Trotter that said simply, "Keep on cooking." And that menu still hangs in my house today. So, talk a little bit about Charlie Trotter and your time there, and how that just, changed your life as a chef.
My gosh. Yeah. I mean, it was one of the more difficult sections of my career, but one that I wouldn't trade for anything, because it really shaped who I was as then I was a cook. I was a sous chef there. Really shaped who I became as a chef. And so many great lessons from Charlie Trotter. I think one of his books, one of my favorite books that he wrote, is called Lessons in Excellence. And it's all about striving for perfection. Of course, once you hit perfection, it no longer exists. It's no longer perfect. But if you strive for that, the least you're going to do is hit a high level of excellence. And, that was his expectation from the minute you set foot in that kitchen. You were all in. There was no, I think I'll check this out, see if I like it. I am not really quite sure about being in the culinary arts. And, you would last about 10 minutes in that environment. So it was really challenging from a physical standpoint, from a mental standpoint, an emotional standpoint. He didn't accept anything less than 1,000% every minute of every day. And he quickly learned 3 words to respond to Charlie Trotter. One was yes, the other was no, and the other one was chef. So it was always, an interesting time. I found myself closing down the kitchen one night. It was about 3 o'clock in the morning. And he comes up and he goes, you know what? I forgot about doing a cooking demo tomorrow at Macy's for about 150 people. So I need you to put together this dish for 150 people. And,
yes, chef.
Nowadays it would be like, hey, chef, it's 3 o'clock in the morning. I've been here for 15 hours. I'm kind of looking forward to going home. No, it was like, yes, chef, when do you need it by? And so I was there at 4 a.m. making 1,000 crepes, and, putting all that together. So it was a crazy time. But what I appreciated about Trotter also was that he had a really interesting way of reinventing himself. Like when things seemed to kind of, the public was kind of like, well, what's he going to do next? He would come up with something to get everyone's attention. And he remained at that level for 25 years. And
amazing.
It was really, really impressive. And I was fortunate enough to be a part of that for a short time. But just an incredible presence and force in culinary arts. We were doing, when I was there, we transitioned. We stopped offering an a la carte menu and we offered all tasting menus. Now that's kind of a normal thing for a lot of restaurants around the country, but
way before
back then it was
unheard of. Yeah. One of the things I was most amazed by, spent a day there one time, was the cleanliness of the kitchen. The sanitation was second to none. I can remember being there for a whole day and then having family come in to dine later in the evening. And at around 4:30, the entire kitchen was being broke down and cleaned from ceiling to floor. And I was like, what's happening? What's happening? Are we closing? We're like, no, this is, pre-service cleaning. And it was amazing. It was impeccable. Yeah.
It was, he set the tone, and, you were either on board or you weren't. And, it was a crazy time, but I learned so much there. I learned, the attention to detail was in the stratosphere, as far as I'm concerned. It was, just in terms of, and it was all encompassing, right? It was, if you had a refrigerator repair person come in back door, you offered to help them with their equipment, and you made them a cappuccino, and you offered to clean up after they were gone. And, it was just it just enveloped the entire operation. Servers were impeccable. They were actors in a lot of ways. They had to run they had to memorize their lines, and the food was very, very intellectual. That was the thing, right? You couldn't go to Trotters and just grab a bite, and just kind of eat. He forced you to think about what you were eating and what the combinations were.
Incredible life lessons. Memories of a lifetime. What are some of the things you believe, the lessons? I love the name of the book too. Lessons in Excellence. What are some of the lessons that you believe you're now in a position to pass along to students, specifically from that time with Charlie?
Yeah, that's a tough one, because there's so much, but I would say that, one of them is attention to detail, for sure.
Yeah.
It's how you place your knife down next to your cutting board. It's how you fold your towel. It's the movements that you make in the kitchen. There's no wasted movements. It's all choreographed. You're on stage. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And being 100% committed to it. And it's a process. It's, I would never have survived in that kitchen if I went into that kitchen right after culinary school. So it's a the progression for me to kind of get to that stage. When I left, he was like, well, let's see, where can we send you? We could send you down to Emeril Lagasse's in New Orleans. We could send you to Norman Van Aken in Miami. And at that point in my career, I was like, I just need to
I want to go home.
I want to do a little camping, and I want to kind of catch my breath a little bit. So they still have the Colorado in me.
But it becomes a friend for life, right? It becomes a fan for life. I love that. It's the way it's supposed to be. Just great stories. So happy that's part of your career. And over the last 10 years as first an instructor here at Escoffier, and for the last several years as the executive chef, who gets the benefit of all of those stories, our students. And it's It's a beautiful thing. Chef, we've kind of come to the end, sadly, of our chat today. But before I let you go, I'm not going to let you off the hook before I ask you, what is the ultimate dish? Your repertoire.
So, that's a really hard question. That and what's your signature dish is a difficult question for me. But the ultimate dish for me is a time. There was a time in my career where I had to hit every highest rated restaurant around the United States. So it was French Laundry, it was Boulet in New York, it was Boulud, it was all of that. And I spent some time in Europe and eating at some of the Michelin 3-star restaurants. And but the one meal that sticks out is I was invited to Alfaro in Spain, northern Spain, to visit my suppliers for olive oil, and huge fan of Spanish olive oils. This particular kind was made from Arbequeña olives. So really, really fruity and beautiful oil. And the owners invited me over to check out their facility. And their English was about as good as my Spanish, which wasn't so great. But we had the common language of food, right? And so one day, it's kind of a rainy day. They invited me over to the farm for some lunch, and I said, "Great, I'd love to come." And went over, and he had Jesus. I forgot his last name. Sorry, but he had this giant like rack, right, that folded together that you could put meats and fish and everything into. And on the ground, no barbecue or anything like that, just on the ground were these Arbequeña branches that were, embers and coals and that sort of thing. And, he brought in some chorizos and some fresh bacon and all these different kinds of meats. And he put them in the rack, and he just set them right on top of the coals, and waited, flipped it over, a little bit of sea salt on there. And we all went inside and had, copious amounts of olive oil and some vegetables. And it was amazing. It's not really so much, at that point, I understood that it's not really so much about the food. It's about who you're with, where you are, what your mindset is. All of that encompasses an ultimate dish in my mind. So that was number one for me.
Absolutely beautiful. You recite it almost as if it took place yesterday.
It feels like it.
Yeah.
Feels like it did. Yeah. It was amazing. Just such a warm feeling. Yeah.
I love that. Brilliant answer. Chef, thank you so much for spending time with us today. Thank you for everything you do for the students of Escoffier and our community.
Thank you, Chef. That was a great time. I'm glad we spent this time together today.
Absolutely. Lots of fun. Thank you for listening to the Ultimate Dish Podcast, brought to you by Auguste Escoffier School of Culinary Arts. Visit escoffier.edu/podcast, where you'll find any materials mentioned during the podcast, including notes, links, and other resources. You can also browse other episodes and subscribe.